Live.
Thank you all for joining us. My name is Erasma Veras Monticholo, and I am your host for Powering Up with Power of Two, in which we engage with community leaders, residents, and advocates to talk about the pressing issues affecting families and children in New York City, and the steps that we can each take as individuals and as a collective to ensure the health and well-being of our communities. A couple of reminders before we begin. We will make this video accessible in Spanish. We also encourage you to share your questions with us in the chat. Today, we will spend approximately 40 minutes discussing the child tax credit, which was originally created in 1997 to help families offset the costs associated with raising children. In March of this year, President Biden signed a bill that restructures the child tax credit for 1 year, making it larger. This year, the CTC serves almost like a child allowance and can be transformative for children. More than 90% of families in the United States with children are eligible for this benefit. And according to a report from the Social Policy Institute, the child tax credit will not only act as a tool for decreasing child poverty in the short term, but also as a tool for increasing family social mobility in the long term. The challenge, however, in certain communities is accessing the CTC. Recent data has shown that there are a large number of families that haven't yet taken advantage of the benefit. In our community of Brownsville, for example, there are an estimated 1,200 families with children under the age of 18 that are missing the CTC. That's approximately 10% of qualifying families have not yet accessed the CTC. That's $4 million that local families are missing out on. And that number grows larger if we include families across Brooklyn and the communities we partner with in the South Bronx. Why aren't families accessing the CTC? Well, many families are unaware that they qualify for it. They may be hesitant to apply due to concerns about their tax filing history or due to a lack of bank account access. So today, we are going to do our best to tackle those concerns. Here to help us do that is our guest, Colin Campbell. Colin is Chief Attorney Advisor to the Assistant Secretary for Tax Policy on Federal Income Tax Matters. Since joining the Office of Tax Policy in 2018, Colin has assisted in the development and drafting of regulations and other published guidance to implement Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the CARES Act, and the American Rescue Plan. Colin earned an LLM in taxation from the Georgetown University Law Center, a JD from Suffolk University Law School, and a BA in political science from Bates College. Colin is joining us by phone today. Colin, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, and I apologize again for the technical issues. I guess the Treasury security system is really, really tight, but I'm super happy to join. Just got off the phone with folks from the Treasury and the White House. We're working through the legislation, and so I'm just very happy to be here and happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Well, I'm happy to hear that the security system at the Treasury is running well. That's a good thing for all of us. Yeah, that's fantastic. So, Colin, we're going to get right into it because we received hundreds of questions, and I know that we only have 40 minutes, but let's see if we can do our best to get through them, if that's okay. So here we go. Okay. So I introduced the CTC, the child tax credit, at the beginning of this opening, but can you tell our viewers what the CTC is exactly?
Yeah, sure thing. So the CTC is really two things for this year. It's an enhanced and expanded credit for per child, $3,000 for children ages 6 to 17 this year, and $3,600 for children under age 6. But what I mean by two things is that you receive 50% of the credit through advance payments from July to December. And then once you file your tax return in 2022, you'll get the other 50%. And so that's really it in a nutshell.
Okay, wonderful. And where does this money come from, and how long is it available?
Well, the money comes from the federal government, and this money is available. I guess let me try to answer that in a way that makes some sense for me here. I guess it's available. Technically, it's available right now. If you'll have till November 15th if you're a non-filer to go on to the Code for America tool, which the IRS links to, and I'm happy to circulate that link after the call if you haven't filed your 2020 return or your 2019 return. But you could still claim 100% of that credit on your 2021 tax return in the 2022 tax filing season. And so that's the quick answer. I mean, you can file that tax return for the 2021 tax year through October of next year. So if, I know that there's probably plenty of advocates on the phone and the like, but the key point here is to get all of your clients into the tax system. The easiest way is through that Code for America tool. And, but no matter what, get your clients into the tax system. So.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. And can you share with us the specific amounts that families could potentially receive?
Yeah, sure thing. So for children, if you have a child under age 6 during 2021, you receive up to $3,600 for that child. If the child is ages 6 to 17 during this year, it's $3,000. That comes out to $300 a month for the child under age 6 and $250 a month for the child, age 6 through 17. That number changes a bit if you come into the system later. So let's say I haven't filed a return yet, so I go and use the Code for America tool. I will receive 2 monthly payments, which will make up all the missed payments. So it'll be a huge payment that I would get immediately, and then I would still pick up the other 50% during next filing season.
Okay, I see. Okay. And let's talk a little bit about the application and filing process. What exactly is the process for applying for the CTC and then receiving the CTC?
Sure. If your client has income less than the standard deduction amount for them, then they don't have a filing requirement generally, and so they can come and use the online tool that Code for America has provided, and that's the IRS link to that. That's also on ctc.gov. It's a very, very, very easy tool. I've helped folks sign up for it, and it took us like 7 minutes. For folks above the standard deduction, you're going to have to file like a full tax return, which is not, there are other fates worse than filing a tax return, but it's a little bit harder. But that's what you'll have to do. And that gets you into the system. I will note this, and I think it's an important thing to note. There are many other tax benefits besides the child tax credit. For instance, you've got the third round of stimulus payments that you could get. You've got the recovery rebate credit. You've got the earned income tax credit. So getting your folks into the system, great for child tax credit purposes, but there's a lot of other money on the table too that they could access.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for that reminder. I think a lot of folks are familiar with the earned income tax credit. And of course, have experience with the CTC, but they're seeing it in a different way as part of the stimulus package. So thank you for that clarification. Now, one of the questions that we've received from a lot of our families is, do you have to be employed to receive the expanded CTC?
Not at all. No, you do not have to be employed. One of the key upgrades to the child tax credit is that it is fully refundable. And so you don't need income. So, unlike the EITC, the child tax credit is just completely refundable. No income requirement.
Okay, so that means that families that are currently receiving, let's say, support, for their living expenses could potentially be eligible.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So if they're receiving public assistance, for example.
Yeah, public assistance would not affect it. Yep, they should. We get that question all the time. It's a very good question, but no. That, folks who are receiving assistance, that's one of the target populations for the advance payments and the child tax credit in general.
Okay, wonderful. And so the other question that we have received are from caregivers that already filed taxes for 2020, for example, but recently had a baby. And so they're curious, will they be able to claim the advanced monthly CTC for their new baby?
Your connection broke up. Yeah, could you, for the new, okay. So if they filed a 2020 tax return, right, and they had a child during 2021, the question is whether they'll be able to claim the new child. So the IRS and Treasury are working like around the clock to get that functionality integrated into the portal. When and the portal is the child tax credit, update portal, what the IRS likes to call CTC up. We are working hard to get that into the portal before the end of the year, so that parents can claim their new child. I just can't promise, but I will say that this is a daily. We have daily meetings with the IRS, and so I'm optimistic. Hopefully it happens this year. If it doesn't, you can still claim that child under 2021 tax return.
Okay. So there's still a possibility that they can claim it under the 2021. Okay. Wonderful. That's really helpful to know. And you mentioned this a little bit, and I want to make sure that we tackle it, head on, because sometimes the families that we partner with don't necessarily file taxes. So what happens if let's say new parents didn't file taxes last year?
Right. That is that is also functionality that we are trying to, integrate into the IRS systems. That's a much heavier lift. And, I'm optimistic that we're gonna solve it, but the idea here is that because they didn't file a tax return, the IRS doesn't have any record of them, and so, I would say, hopefully, that functionality is added. But I will say this: even if it's not, those new parents, one, they should file a tax return right away, for 2020. But also, two, they will be able to claim 100% of the credit for that child on their 2021 tax return. So it's really, the answer is the same regardless of the functionality. They have to file their return for 2020. They're missing out on a ton of tax benefits, but also, two, they can still claim the child on their 2021 tax return.
Okay. And so just to follow up on that question, Colin, so, if for whatever reason, a family, a new parent neglects to file, now, if they file in 2021, will those payments be retroactive or no, or that's not possible?
So let's say we have some new parents, and they didn't file a 2020 return, and they have a child. If they file that 2020 return during the 2022 tax filing season, by April 15th in that time, then they'll get 100% of the dollars that they would have otherwise gotten. If they had received 50% during the year in 2021, and then the remaining 50% after they file their tax return. So they're always going to be made whole. The issue is if they'll receive that money a bit later. So I don't know if that was a helpful answer. If you have a follow-up on that, I'm really happy to just throw out answers until they are helpful. Okay.
Thanks, Colin. No, that is very helpful. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Now, yeah, so the other population that we engage with are young people. So almost like emancipated minors to a degree, with children. And so, they too are interested in accessing the CTC. And so I'm curious, would they be able to, even though they're still under 17?
Right. And so the way the statute works, there's eligibility for the child tax credit. There's eligibility requirements, and one of those requirements is that you said the child was emancipated, or not child. I'm so sorry, minor was emancipated. If they cannot be claimed as a dependent by somebody else, then generally they are going to be eligible to claim the child tax credit for their child. Situations where you have children minors who can be claimed by their parents, that's when the statute, the law, prevents them from being eligible to claim the child tax credit. And if you want to read extra on that, it's Section 152 of the code, the Internal Revenue Code. But that kind of walks through those requirements.
I see. Okay. So, I'm going to ask you really particular questions just because this is the population that is listening in right now. And these are the questions that they pose to us. What if a teen parent that lives in foster care with their child, they could, based on your response, be able to file their tax return and claim the CTC if and only if they're not claimed as a dependent under their legal guardian, so to speak. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the litmus test right there. The first question I would ask my client is, hey, can someone else claim you as a dependent? And if the answer to that is yes, then they're going to be foreclosed under the statute. If the answer is no, then you're off to the races. I mean, there's other requirements, but that's the big hurdle.
Got it. Okay. And what happens if a child turns 18 this year? Will they qualify at all?
Yes, it's a very good question, and one we get a lot. And if I could I'm trying to get some FAQs out of this. Actually, it literally was on my laptop last night. If a child turns 18 during the year, there's no eligibility for the child tax credit for that year. So for instance, my birthday is June 14th. If I turned 18 this year, which I wish, my parents would not be able to claim me for the child tax credit for 2021 at all. And so that's how that works. There is a little wrinkle here with death. So if a child passes away during the year, the parent is eligible for the child tax credit for the year. So 18 and death are treated very differently.
Got it.
So in case that's helpful. No, I actually hope it's not helpful for anybody on this call.
Yeah. We've all experienced lots of loss, right? So one of the questions also that have come our way relates to families and caregivers that may have split custody between multiple parents and caregivers, or divorced parents. And so I'm wondering if you can shed some light on whether or not the benefit can be split between multiple caregivers.
Yes, the IRS provides forms in a way to split payment and also to alternate payment. And so, yeah, that's something that that's not new for this year. That's something that has been around for a long time, and happy to circulate a link for that as well. If that's helpful, if you guys are circulating materials after the call.
Absolutely.
Great. Yeah, that's something that the IRS tries very hard to be flexible and understands sort of fluid life situations. And so, yeah, there's a form and whatnot that folks can fill out to take care of that.
Okay. Yeah, we're getting lots of questions here. So suppose there is a domestic violence situation. How can, the parent that is removing themselves from the domestic violence situation ensure that the abuser doesn't receive the CTC? Is there a system or mechanism in place that can ensure that the person who's currently caring for the child receives it versus the person that ordinarily, claims the family, claims the other parent, the spouse, and the child?
So this is great. I mean, you guys. I have a feeling all the best questions of all the outreach calls I've done are going to come from this call. So, well, this is very good. It's an excellent question. Just to step back, the way advance payments work this year under the child tax credit law is that the IRS has to make an estimate of what they think this family unit is going to be eligible for and who is part of that family unit. And that estimate's based on old information. Under the statute, they say look to the 2020 return or look to the 2019 return if the 2020 return hasn't been filed. And so if something occurs during the year or after that return has been processed, the IRS is going to have a lag. And so what Congress has provided, or Congress mandated and the IRS provided, was this portal, which allows folks to come in and unenroll from child tax credit payments, update their marital status, and the like. So it's going to be very difficult because of the lag to just on one, next day just shut off payments for the other spouse. But what will happen is at the end of the year, there's a reconciliation. Basically, it's a truing up on your 2021 tax return that you filed in the 2022 season. And if the child lived with you for more than half the year instead of your spouse, and you split, obviously, so the child wasn't living with the spouse, then you'll be able to claim the credit as much as you're entitled to claim. And the spouse, if the child didn't live with the spouse for more than half the year, and if your spouse was above the safe harbor that Congress put in, the repayment protection safe harbor, the spouse is going to have to pay back everything. Mm. So that's the sort of hammer here. I will also say this, for the abused spouse, the IRS does not share information. So if you come in and say my marital status is different, whatever, the IRS is not going to share any information with the spouse who you left. So there's never going to be any worry about them getting your address or anything like that. And so I think that's a very, very important piece of information for your constituents, is that the person who's been abused is protected at all times by the IRS. So.
Thank you, Colin, for saying that. That is very encouraging to hear, and I'm sure the advocates that are listening in and families listening in are encouraged by that, and now have an understanding of how they can go about, accessing that without necessarily setting off alarms for the abuser, right? So thank you. Let's see, we have, several more questions, lots more questions. One in particular from Avian, if taxes were filed, but child tax funds have not been received as of yet, is there action that a filer still needs to take to receive the funds?
No, there isn't any action. So my understanding, so you file the 2020 return, and you haven't, and a month has gone by, right, and you haven't received a child tax credit payment. You're like, what is going on? You can reach out to the IRS, and I would recommend that, because a few things might have happened. One, and hopefully this isn't the case, but one, the IRS might have spotted like an error that they're trying to figure out on your return. It could be something very minor, could be something hopefully not major, but you know what I mean? And so it'll get held up. And so when you call the IRS will walk you through what could be wrong with your return. Really, that's just the first step that you should do. You can do this online, and you can also do this through the IRS, helpline. So that's really your first step. I've helped a bunch of folks who've had the same problem, and it's ranged from many different things. One is the IRS just didn't receive your return for whatever reason that might have been. So the individual remailed their return in, and they got their payments. The other one was, there's a problem on your return, and they had conversations with the IRS, return got processed, and then they started receiving their payments, albeit a bit later than they would have liked. But every person's different, and so the best step you can take is just figure out what is going on at the IRS. But that means calling them. Yeah.
Okay, that's helpful. So we will be sure to share those, specific phone numbers so folks can go ahead and call and check on the status. We have a question here from Monica asking, are foster parents eligible to apply for the CTC or to claim basically their foster children?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, that they can, and they should. Yeah. The statute's very clear on that.
Okay, wonderful. Then let's see. Then I have a question here from a grandparent. What if the child is living with grandparents who are not, or not as of yet, the legal guardians? Are the grandparents eligible to apply?
Yes, they are. All the same requirements for grandparents. The requirements that apply to grandparents are the same requirements that apply to mom and dad. So, you just have to make sure the child has lived with you for more than half the year. That's the major eligibility hurdle.
Okay, so as a follow-up to that, Colin, some of our older senior caregivers, maybe retired or maybe receiving, Social Security benefits or other benefits, and so they're curious whether filing and receiving this would impact their benefits at all.
That's such a good question. The answer is no, just to get that out of the way.
Okay.
But these are the types of questions that we get over and over again, and I totally appreciate it. I totally appreciate where folks are coming from. We have an FAQ on irs.gov. We try to be very clear in some, IRS press releases where I don't know, I'm not sure until I joined Treasury, that probably wasn't at the top of my inbox, on my Gmail, but but we've tried to be really clear about that. But if you could be clear, if you could help us with your constituents, the answer is no. It also doesn't affect your immigration status. Absolutely not. Mm-hmm. Nothing bad can come from claiming a child tax credit. And of course, you're not eligible. Then you may have to pay it back. But yeah, these folks should fire away, and I hope they do.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. One of the other questions, and you just mentioned it a little bit, and I want to make sure that we, expand on it just a little bit more. The undocumented, caregiver. So, that's part of our constituency. And so if the caregiver is undocumented, but the child or the children are documented, can they still apply for the CTC?
Yeah, I don't want not to be like the tax nerd here, but I just,
No, we appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, my wife doesn't, but so the guardian or the parent will need to have an ITIN, and that's an individual tax identification number. If they have that, they are now eligible to claim the child. If the child has a Social Security number that is valid for work, then they're fine. So parent needs what we call an ITIN, individual tax identification number, and the child has a Social Security number which is valid for work, then yes, they should they should apply. Now, you're going to ask me, well, what the heck does Social Security number valid for work mean? And I didn't know that either until I joined Treasury. All it means is there are 3 different types of Social Security cards out there, but all you have to tell your constituents is, if your child has a Social Security card and nowhere on it does it say, in quotes, not valid for work, then you're fine. So the Social Security Administration made it really easy. As long as the card doesn't say not valid for work, it's a good, your kid is fine and you should move forward. So sorry for the kind of over technical stuff, but that's really it right there.
Yeah, no, that's important for parents to know. So as long as the Social Security card does not say not valid for work, then they should proceed with applying. And Colin, what about situations where everybody is undocumented, but let's say the primary caregivers have the ITIN? How does that work? Or they don't qualify at all?
Sure. Yeah. So if the child does not have a Social Security card, then they will not qualify currently for the child tax credit. I will just say this, Congress, right now currently pushing to get rid of the Social Security requirement, at least, parts of Congress. And so that's out there. And so for the advocates, that's always, that's encouraging news for them. But unfortunately, they're not eligible for the child tax credit. However, they got 2 options. One is try to get that Social Security, number for the child as soon as possible. And that'll then come to the next question of, well, how do you do that? Or I know you guys know how to do that, but the more pressing question is, well, applications seem to be kind of like processing seems to be delayed by the IRS, due to the COVID and whatnot. And so processing is delayed currently, but it's still incredibly important to get that application in, because you're going to set your clients up for the tax filing season. Okay, so even if it takes more than the 7 to 10 weeks that it has taken in years past, you're starting early enough, so you'll have that Social Security number in hand and be able to claim 100% of the benefit on your tax return. Now, the consolation prize. If the parent has an ITIN and the child doesn't have a Social Security number, but has a different form of identification like ITIN, then the parent is still eligible for what they call an other dependent credit. It's a $500 credit per child, and it's not refundable. So there will be some income that would need to be generated in order to actually, benefit from the credit. But I think it's better than nothing.
Right.
So just make sure your clients are, keep an eye out for those.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. That's really helpful. The other question that we have that came in relates to residency requirements. So just to give you some context, Colin, some of the families that we partner with are homeless, and have their housing is unstable. And so what happens if, let's say, a family that lives or is currently residing in one shelter is transient and then, applies for this and then moves somewhere else? How does the IRS find the family? Should they reach out to the IRS and share their new address? Like, what is the process?
Sure. No, that's a really, really good question. First of all, residing just means, are you in the United States? Okay, so no one needs to have a permanent address to be eligible for the child tax credit, full stop. So that's the easy one. So I'll get this question a lot from not only like homeless advocates, but also like migrant workers and whatnot. There was a lot of confusion around this sort of requirement, and it's really just, are you in the United States for more than half the year? So that's easy. Now the next question is, well, I don't have a permanent address. What can I do? And so there are, the IRS, for one, has invaluable and vast relationships with different homeless shelters throughout the country. And frankly, I worked on the stimulus payments, the economic impact payments for the past couple of years. And we're just, for child tax credit advance payment purposes, we're just leveraging those relationships and expanding them. And so, like, let's say I, had a shelter that I was currently at, and I think I would be at for the next, period of time. I work with the shelter. The shelter, I can use that address, okay, and get the child tax credit advance payments that way. Another thing you can do, like, just, I live in DC, and so we have, a community connections center right down the road from my house. I've helped folks who just use their address as a way to get the child tax credit payments and the economic stimulus payment through them. So talk to the person. I would encourage your clients, or work with the shelters and the community centers that your clients interact with, and get that set up. And they can then interface with the IRS. But we're trying to make it as easy as possible, I guess, is what I'm trying to say through this awful rambling answer back to you. And if you have any questions or further follow-up questions, you should email me, because I'd be happy to help with this personally.
Fabulous. Yes, Colin, thank you. Thank you so much. Let's see, we have a follow-up question from Monica. If a foster parent pays babysitting out of their pocket, can this be claimed?
So
go ahead.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So that's a very good question. That's a super good question. It just took a second for it to spark in my brain. But no, there's no real, no one's going to tell you how to pay for your child tax credit. How are you going to use your child tax credit payment? And so, you could spend it on anything. What the hope is, that it's paid for child purposes. But really, it's something to provide support to families with children. And, if that means you got to fix the tire on your car so you can get to work to then help your child, whatever it is, but that's the idea, is to support families. Yes, and yes.
Okay, wonderful, Colin, thank you. And that's exactly it. That's the message, that, the CTC has been expanded to support families in the way that they need. There aren't any restrictions on how, the funds are used, as long as it's beneficial to the family. There's a question from Robert here. What happens if your kids are 18 years old but live with you?
Sure. Well, you're not going to be eligible for the child tax credit for your 18-year-old. However, that earned income tax credit, they would still be a qualifying child for that purpose. So the tax code is not the simplest book out there. And so there's different types of qualifying children for different tax benefits, and it's a bummer. But it's good in this context because you won't get the CTC, but you could get the EITC, the Earned Income Tax Credit.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to move on to some questions that came in related to payments and benefits. And so one of the questions is, will advance payments be reduced if they owe child support payments, back taxes, or federal or state debt?
Okay, so the advance payments themselves, there's two different things we're going to have to talk about here because they're treated differently. There's the advance payments, which are the $300 or $250 a month per child that you get during the year till December 31st. Then there's the 50% that you pick up when you file your tax return next year. So the advance payments are protected from federal debts. And so what people call offsets, okay? The advance payments are not protected against like state level garnishments and local level garnishments, but your local jurisdiction, depending on where you live, they may provide protection for that. And so that's answer one. We're talking just about the checks that you receive in the mail or the direct deposit.
Mm-hmm.
When you file your tax return in 2022 for this past year, that can be offset. There's no protection in the statute. And so if you owe like a tax debt, like say that you owe money to the government from last year's return, then your refund could be used to offset that amount. That's just the way the statute works. So not the best answer. And I hope we don't end on that answer. I hope there's like a
No. And a lot can happen, Colin. And maybe I'm just optimistic between now and then in terms of the statute. Is that possible?
Yes. No. I totally understood. Yeah.
Okay. When applying for the CTC, can parents also receive any unclaimed stimulus payments as well?
That's a really, really, really good question. So let's say a parent hasn't filed a 2020 tax return. Mm-hmm. If they file the 2020 tax return right now, there's tax benefits you can pick up. Let's say it's the simplified one. Let's say they're a non-filer and they go and use the Code for America tool. They'll sign up for the child tax credit payment. That's one good thing. They will also sign up to receive the 2020 recovery rebate credit. So if they didn't receive, like the gentleman who I helped sign up a month ago now, he didn't receive his 2020 stimulus payments either. You know how there was like round one and round two last year economic impact payments? He didn't receive any of those. So he then was eligible for the 2020 recovery rebate credit, which was both of those put together. And then the third thing you'll pick up is the third round of economic impact payments, which were enacted as part of the American Rescue Plan earlier this year. And so there were three major things, tax benefits that they could pick up. So bottom line is, if you haven't filed, you should file. The benefits greatly outweigh any potential detriments.
Exactly. There's a lot of benefit here, and it's an opportunity to take advantage of it, right, and maximize it as much as possible. One other question that we receive, some of our communities have historical challenges with banking institutions, and so many don't necessarily have a bank account. In other words, they're unbanked. So how is the IRS and the Treasury Department working to ensure that families, are receiving, the checks, and then alleviating some of the barriers in terms of getting those checks cashed? Does the IRS and the Treasury Department have any particular relationships, for example, with any banking institutions that folks can go to?
This is actually my best answer for that question. I get it a few times. Is that I believe it's the FDIC which has the right bank account for you, website, and I'm happy to send you that link as well after the call. I think that's the best answer for now that I have. There's always thought going on at Treasury and IRS about how to provide a better system for the unbanked, and personally, I think it's always better if there's less unbanked than more banked, because direct payments are the fastest, simplest, and most secure way for folks to receive these tax benefits. But this is something that I would say is an in-progress issue here.
Okay.
And I hate to jump in, but I think I'm going to have to join a call with the Hill ASAP, and so I think I'm going to have to jump very soon.
Okay. No worries, Colin. Yep. Just I would love to have you just give us some parting words to our listeners right now.
Oh, sure. I think, one, thank you so much. Two, I'm sorry you have to look at what I imagine is an awful picture of me. I don't know where you got it, and I'm glad I can't see it. Might be from my, I wish it was from my wedding in Greece with my wife. Somehow I doubt it. So
it looks good. Don't worry. It looks good.
I would just say the most important thing is to get your clients signed up into the system. Get them to file tax returns. The benefits will always vastly outweigh any benefits, detriments. There's almost always no detriments. Really, because the question here is, well, what that we didn't ask on this call is, well, what happens if maybe my client owes a ton of taxes, or they think they might? It's always the elephant in the room question. The one answer is the IRS works very closely and is very flexible, providing repayment programs and the like, and also just structuring how much you actually have to pay back. So that's one thing. The IRS is very good and works very hard with folks like that. And two, there's a lot of tax benefits that you'll get by signing up through filing a return that may offset a bunch of what you owe. The EITC is a very big tax benefit. Child tax credit, big tax benefit. Economic stimulus payments, that's a lot of money. So you really want to get into the system. And the more you get into the system, the more benefits you're going to receive automatically in the future, or that you're just going to, you're going to have you're going to be able to be socialized with the sort of tax process, and you'll be more comfortable with final returns and claiming benefits in the future. I think that's really it. The other thing is, I can't harp on it enough. If you have an issue where your child does not have a Social Security number, or you don't have, or the parent doesn't have a Social Security number, I understand that there's delays in the ITIN application process, but get that started early,
right.
And get that going, because it's very helpful. It's a very helpful thing to get. So that's really the best I could give you. And again, I know a rambling answer, so I apologize, but yeah.
No, Colin, this has been terrifically helpful. Thank you for your time and for chatting with us today. We know you have to go, so no worries. Best of luck on your next call. To all of the families watching, and take care. To all of the families out there watching and listening, please call the sites that will appear at the end of the show to learn more about your eligibility. And please share this information with your friends, with your family, and neighbors. Remember that the CTC is an opportunity to give you some breathing room so that you're able to move forward economically. And to any policymakers watching or listening, this is my message to you. Eradicating poverty is not a task of charity. It is an act of justice. So please vote to make the CTC expansion permanent. Okay, stay safe and healthy, everyone. Take care.